Hi, I'm Hannah, also known as Hannah B Reads, and welcome to my first YouTube video. This feels really odd doing this right now, but we're going to power through this together, and we're going to talk about some books. I really wish I had a little microphone. I feel like that would make things better. I thought for my first video it would be fun to do an end of the year book tag and go over some of my 2025 reading. So I pulled together some questions and have them on my iPad, and we're just going to go through them. Starting off strong, we have the best book I read this year. I'm gonna warn you, there's not going to be one book per question. It's going to be multiple. I actually have 3 because I cannot choose between these. So in no particular order, the first one is Babel. As you can see, I thoroughly enjoyed this book. I've never learned so much while reading a book, and this book was just packed full with knowledge, and I thought the story was super important, and I was so scared to read this book, but I'm really glad that I did. Next favorite book of the year is Hot Wax by ML Rio. I was so swept up in this book. I started reading it on a whim and finished it in just a couple days because it took me by a whirlwind. I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. It's one of those books where you feel like you can feel something bad about to happen, but you just don't know what it's going to be. Really loved this, and I really love ML Rio. And my last favorite book of the year, I actually don't have a copy of, but it's The Names by Florence Knapp. I buddy read this book with a friend of mine, and it was one of her recommendations, and I am so glad that she recommended this book to me. It was a roller coaster of emotions. It was incredible, and if you know me in real life, I have probably recommended this book to you because it's quick, it's fast-paced, and it will have you feeling every emotion you can possibly feel. I also recommend going into this book blind because I feel like it just helps make the book that much better. Next one is The Biggest Surprise, and I have 3 for this one also. First book for this one is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. I am not a very big contemporary romance reader, but I really enjoyed this book, so definitely took me by surprise. Next book is All's Well by Mona Awad. This was my first Mona Awad book, and I had such a good time reading this. It was so weird, for lack of a better word, and it felt like I was in a fever dream, and I just had the best time reading it. And the last book is Writers and Lovers by Lily King, which I'm actually reading right now. Again, I started this on a whim, and I am absolutely loving it. I will probably be finishing it after I finish this video. The next one is the most underrated, and I actually do only have one book for this, is The Essex Serpent by Sarah Perry. I got this book from my husband's boss's wife like 2 or 3 years ago, and I just read it this year, and it was incredible. I, first of all, am obsessed with the cover of this book, and I'm so mad that it took me so long to read it. Honestly, at first I wasn't super into it, but about 25% through the book, it sucked me in, and this ended up being one of my 5-star reads this year. The book is so cozy, and in the writing style is kind of similar to the classics, but it's just a little bit easier to read. And it really talks about human connection and how we all kind of crave different relationships from different people, and I just absolutely adored this book. The next one is the most overhyped book. I do have a copy of this book, but it's behind all of these right here, so I cannot get it out. But some of y'all may hate me for this, but I'm gonna say Onyx Storm. That book was not for me. I did not love it. I don't particularly love where the story is going in that series, and I'm undecided on whether or not I'm gonna finish it. I may give the next books a shot on audio, but I'm really undecided on whether or not I'm gonna be continuing that series. All right, the next one is most disappointing reads, and again, I have 3 books for this, besides Onyx Storm, because that one's kind of grouped into there. I would also say Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry. I have been really disappointed in not only this book, but Funny Story as well. I will definitely still continue to give her books a shot as I've loved them in the past, but for some reason this one just didn't click. As I said earlier, I'm not a huge contemporary romance reader. I used to be, but I think that maybe it's just not my genre anymore. The second book I actually just unhauled recently, but it is The Hawthorne Legacy, which is the second book in the Inheritance Game series. I just really did not enjoy that one. I really liked the first one. The second one just felt a little too young for me, and I love young adult, but this one just didn't do it for me. I felt like the romance in it was a little repetitive and a little silly, honestly. I don't think I will be continuing that series. And the last one, and probably my most disappointing, was Bunny by Mona Awad. As I said earlier, All's Well, I really enjoyed. I had so much fun reading that book. This one, I felt like I was losing brain cells reading this. I can truly understand how some people may love this book, and I am so upset that I did not enjoy it. Honestly, I couldn't stand the bunnies. I didn't really care for the main character. The plot was cool, but I think I clicked out of it really early on and I just did not enjoy the rest of it. The next one is the book that made you the most emotional. I have a couple for this one, but the first one, Sunrise on the Reaping. Everyone warned me that I was going to cry during this book, and they were not wrong. I did. I cried a lot. It was so horribly sad. Not gonna lie, I felt like some of the things in this book were a little unnecessary and over the top. Mitch, I understand you now. I understand why the way you are. And I'm also so sorry. Other two books that made me emotional were Babel and The Names. The next one is Book That Gave You the Biggest Book Hangover. I have two for this, and it's not just one book, they're both entire series. One of them gave me a hangover because it was really good, and then the other one kind of just depleted me. First is Once Upon a Broken Heart. I read this entire series in 11 days, and I read the last book in less than 24 hours. And I had the biggest book hangover from it because it was so good. I fell hard and fast for these characters, and I think about this book almost every single day. So shout out to my friend Emily for putting me on these books. You've destroyed me. The next is the Crescent City series. I read these 3 books with my friend Emily and my cousin Savannah, and I started off really enjoying the series, but by the end of it, I was kind of out of it. I definitely don't think it was my favorite series of Sarah J. Maas. I still think Throne of Glass is better. By the end of this, I was just kind of sick and tired of most of the characters, and it gave me a pretty big book hangover just because I read all of these back to back to back, so I had been so sucked up and consumed by the world that once I was done, I was just kind of like, what do I do now? I still had a lot of fun reading this with my friends. It's always fun to do a buddy read. Unfortunately, I just don't think that this was one of my favorites from Sarah J. Maas. Next one is Most Memorable Characters. Again, for that one, I think I have to go with Once Upon a Broken Heart because I can't stop thinking about Jax and Evangeline. They are my Roman Empire. Every single day, I think about them. Next one is Biggest Slump Saver, and I'm going to go with Spectacular for this one. I just recently read this right before Christmas, and I feel like every year right around Christmas time, I head towards a slump. But this book was so fast-paced and just fun that it pulled me right out of it. Also, these illustrations in this book are absolutely stunning. Let me see if I can find one. Like, beautiful. And the cover artwork, insane. I'm obsessed. I also think I want to mention Writers and Lovers for this one because I just recently finished 100 Years of Solitude, and I actually started Writers and Lovers while I had a couple chapters left in 100 Years, and I felt that book pulling me towards the slump, and Writers and Lovers has pulled me out of it. Next we have book that I read the fastest, and it was probably Small Thing Like These, which is a 70-page Christmas novella, or the last book in the Once Upon a Broken Heart trilogy, which was The Ballad of Never After, because I read that one in less than 24 hours. I also read Small Things Like These in less than 24 hours, but that one was only 70 pages. Next is the book that took me the longest to read, and I'm going to list a couple. First is 100 Years of Solitude. I think it took me about 22 days to finish, and I actually just finished it yesterday. I'll tell you what, I have never read a book as crazy as that one before. If you know, you know. The next book is Atlas 6. This one I think took me around 24 days to read. I don't know why, I just was having a really hard time getting into this one at the time, and I didn't end up loving it at the end, but I'm glad that I finally read it because this has been on my TBR for a long time. And then we have Babel, which took me 21 days to read. And the last one was the one that took me the absolute longest. I actually listened to it on audio. It was The Darkest Part of the Forest by Holly Black. My friend recently bought me all 3 of the Cruel Prince books, but she told me I had to read Darkest Part of the Forest before reading these. I decided to read it on audio, and I started it, stopped it for months, and then recently finished it within the last 2 months. So overall, it took me 7 months to finish that book, but I did it, and here we are. Next is the shortest and longest books that I read. The shortest one was Small Things Like These, which I believe was about 70 pages. And then the longest book was House of Flame and Shadow, which was 835 pages. Next one is a new favorite author that I read this year. The first one is Maggie O'Farrell, who wrote Hamnet. I read this with my Literary Wenches book club, and her writing is just so stunning and beautiful. I still have not seen this movie, which I'm upset about, but I really loved this book, and I know she has a new book coming out in 2026 called Land, and I cannot wait to read it. My other new favorite author, who technically I read her for the first time in 2024, but I read a lot more of her in 2025, is Stephanie Garber. I read the last 2 books in her Carve series this year, plus the entire Once Upon a Broken Heart series. plus this book, and then Spectacular, which is the novella. And I just can't get enough of her writing. Writing is just so whimsical and magical, and she's really good at transporting you into her worlds. She's just really good at making these enchanted, beautiful places, and I would be more than happy to live in one of her worlds. I can't wait to see what else she writes. And that kind of leads us into our next question, which is who is my most read author this year? And it was Stephanie Garber with, I believe, 7 books, and then Suzanne Collins because I listened to the original trilogy for Hunger Games along with the 2 prequels. The next one is favorite series or part of a series that I read this year. I have 3 again, and the first one is the Bone Season series. First of all, can we talk about this cover because I'm obsessed with it? I read 2 of these books this year, and I am absolutely in love with this series. It is unlike any other fantasy I've ever read. Samantha Shannon is an incredible writer and world builder, and I know the next book in the series just came out this year, but I am patiently waiting to read it because I really want to get it in paperback and read it physically, but I'm getting really impatient, so I might have to get it on my Kindle. The next one is the Red Rising series, which I'm not going to pull it out because I pulled out the Bone Season over here and it was a pain in the butt, so I don't want to do that again. But I read Golden Sun this year and I really enjoyed it, and I really need to get on with the next one. This series is absolutely insane, and I'm really interested to see where it goes. And then last but not least for that one is the Once Upon a Broken Heart series, as obviously, you know, I'm obsessed with it. Next is my favorite audiobook, and I'm going to mention 2 of them. First is the Hunger Games trilogy. I read the original trilogy for the first time this year, and I listened to them on audiobook, and they were so good. And the next one is King of Ashes by S.A. Cosby. I listened to Razorblade Tears a couple years ago, and I absolutely loved it. So I requested the audio for King of Ashes on NetGalley, and I just got around to listening to it this year. But let me tell you something, he is so good about writing books that feel like movies. Like, I felt that I was watching this action on the big screen while I was listening to it. He is such an incredible and entertaining writer, and if you have not read anything by him yet, I highly recommend doing some of his books on audio. There is one more I want to mention for this one, and that is a book called Christmas All Around. I believe it's by Martha Waters. I also received that one on NetGalley, and I received it a couple years ago, and I was super unsure about it as I'm not a big contemporary romance person anymore. But I will say, I actually really enjoyed that one. It was a really good Christmas time read, and it wasn't too cheesy, and I would actually recommend it. Okay, lastly, I'm going to rapid fire some honorable mentions, which are just going to be books that I read that I liked, and I think you should read them too. First one is Evenings and Weekends by Oysa McKenna. This was kind of a more different read for me this year, but it kind of restarted my love for literary fiction, and I think I will be reading a lot of books like these in 2026. Then we have I Who Have Never Known Men. This book will not let you stop thinking, and I think that this should be a required reading for everyone. Then we have Frankenstein, and this is probably my favorite classic that I've read so far. And lastly, we have Bury Our Bones in the Midnight Soil by V.E. Schwab. It would not be a good reading year for me if I did not read a V.E. Schwab book. I actually ended up getting my hands on an arc of this book, and then I went and saw V.E. Schwab in Atlanta this year. Hearing her talk about this book just validated my love for her and her writing. Although Addie LaRue still takes the cake for me, I still really loved this book and definitely think you should read it too. Another fun fact about this book is that during the event that I went to, she asked the audience who had received arcs, and a bunch of us raised our hands, and she proceeded to tell us that she had changed the last line of the story, which I thought was really cool. I really loved what she changed it to. Well, that wraps up my 2025 reading tag. Thank you all who have stayed to watch. I hope that gave you a good insight of what I like to read, and if we have any similarities, please subscribe and come back soon. I do also apologize if the lighting in this video is a little wonky because I am relying on natural light for this. And that's all for now. Hopefully I'll see you again soon.